Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Geraghty.
And welcome, everyone, to the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We have good, crazy, and crazy martinis, really, for conservatives today. Jim, I'm just happy to say that I think this Friday we've got a little more energy left in the tank than the last two Fridays, so we're making some progress. We've had quite a bit of good news this week, so let's get to some more. Cocaine Mitch wins again. This is courtesy of the Washington Post. Endangered Democrats won their freedom to campaign for next month's midterm elections Thursday. And in exchange, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell got something he highly values, votes on 15 of President Trump's judicial nominations. The deal struck by the two parties on Thursday allowed the Senate to wrap up its work until after the November 6th midterm elections. The hiatus comes as a relief to a cadre of Democratic incumbents who face difficult races in states that voted for Trump in 2016. McConnell had threatened to keep senators in Washington voting on Trump's nominees until Election Day. But ultimately, Democrats paid McConnell's ransom to get their incumbents back home. Under the deal, the Senate confirmed all 15 judicial nominees Thursday evening. The Senate also confirmed 21 executive branch nominees by unanimous consent Thursday, including several Assistant Secretaries of State, an Assistant Secretary of Defense, and Deputy Administrators for the Federal Emergency Management Agency and NASA. 3 of the newly confirmed judges will sit on circuit courts, meaning the appeals courts. The remainder are district court judges. So, Jim, Trump always talks about not getting tired of winning, but Mitch McConnell has racked up a lot of wins on these confirmation fights lately.
Greg, can you remember back when people said Mitch McConnell was a squish? That, he doesn't know how to fight. He's got no stomach for it. He's always looking to compromise. Mitch McConnell doesn't know how to use the levers of power and get leverage and all that. Remember that? Like, the people who were making that argument, it was really not that long ago, a year or two ago, really didn't know what they were talking about. I think we can now safely assume that. We can point out that, just because somebody's not necessarily willing to fight for your particular priority doesn't mean he's not willing to fight. And look, I think you can safely say that I don't think you've seen that much of a change in McConnell year by year. I do think the Merrick Garland fight probably was a key and decisive moment. And you would say, you throw that at a Mitch McConnell critic, of which there are fewer of these days. And you kind of back up and say, well, okay, yeah, he was pretty good on that one or something like that. I think you add this up. The sheer number of judges they've gotten through in the last 2 years is just mind-boggling. McConnell appears to have, to the extent the Senate Majority Leader can control these things, appears to have maneuvered things in a way that is a good odds for preserving the majority. You're already hearing grumbling from the Daily Kos crowd saying that Chuck Schumer is always getting rolled and Chuck Schumer is always folding in the face of pressure. And Chuck Schumer doesn't know what he's doing and they need new leadership over on that side. I also would note that as much as you might go, those Democrats, they're desperate to get out there on the campaign trail. Oh, we really put the squeeze to them. Look, Dean Heller out in Nevada might enjoy getting the chance to get back out on there on the campaign trail. As we'll talk about later in the podcast, things are looking up for Ted Cruz. He probably doesn't mind being able to get back to Texas and start doing events all the time. There are a few Republican incumbents who could probably use a little more time to get out there and campaign. But again, it looks like he has managed, at least in terms of judicial confirmations and working around the filibuster and things like that, Mitch McConnell has used the leverage he has about as effectively as he could. I know there's still some folks who say, it's time for Republicans to get rid of the filibuster, et cetera, et cetera. McConnell is unlikely to do that. And let's remember, he can't just do it with waving a magic wand. He has to get all 50 Republicans to agree to get rid of the filibuster, and I don't think the votes are there. But all in all, you want to talk about a guy who has defied the image of him as being this cautious, turtle-like figure. That Cocaine Mitch nickname is going to stick, and if it's not that, Greg, I'm thinking Scarface.
That's right. Yes, and I've been one of the ones who've been critical of Mitch McConnell, but he has acquitted himself very well in these latest confirmation fights. If he can find a way to twist the Democratic arms and actually have regular order and maybe bring our deficits more in line, I'll be one of his biggest cheerleaders. So well done Well done, Mitch McConnell. All right, back to the Senate races in just a moment. But for our first crazy martini, we are going to head over to yesterday's White House meeting that involved President Trump, Kanye West, and in case you missed it, NFL legend Jim Brown was there too. There are times I was wishing there was a visible thought bubble above Jim Brown's head as this conversation played out yesterday. And a lot of people are talking about Kanye West's monologue. That's the word I'm going to use. Some would say rant, some would say tirade if you look at the liberal media. There were certainly some quotes from him that make you stop and think and scratch your head and determine whether or not he's the one who didn't make any sense or you just don't get it. I'm pretty sure it's the former. But here's a couple of clips from Kanye West yesterday in the Oval Office, and then we'll talk about the reaction to it.
I don't answer questions in simple sound bites. You are tasting a fine wine. It has multiple notes to it. The liberal will try to control a black person through the concept of racism because they know that we are very proud, emotional people. So when I said I like Trump to like someone that's liberal, they'll say, oh, but he's racist. You think racism can control me? Oh, that don't stop me. That's an invisible wall.
An invisible wall. He also said time is a myth, which I can tell you from the radio business, it's not. Time is very, very real. So obviously you've got some folks who think this is great because it's potentially an inroad for President Trump and conservatives into the black community because obviously a lot of people pay attention to what Kanye West has to say. Other people, more like us, are saying, I think he's probably still crazy. And you wrote about that a lot in the Morning Jolt. But then you've got the Democratic reaction to this. They didn't mind Kanye West so much when he was ripping on George W. Bush in the wake of Katrina and saying he didn't care about black people. But yesterday, holy cow. Donna Brazil on Twitter, Kanye West has set us back 155 years, which takes us back to 1863 in the middle of slavery and the Civil War. Wish Sojourner Truth could have met him outside the White House and Frederick Douglass inside the Oval Office. Barack Obama never would have become president with this crap. Let's meet Kanye on Election Day by voting for Democrats. Over at CNN, Don Lemon has decided that Kanye West has some mental health issues.
What I saw was a minstrel show today. Him in front of all of these white people, mostly white people, embarrassing himself and embarrassing Americans, but mostly African Americans, because every one of them is sitting either at home or with their phones watching this, cringing. I couldn't even watch it. I had to turn the television off because it was so hard to watch. Him sitting there being used by the President of the United States, the President of the United States exploiting him, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, exploiting someone who needs help.
So I love the fact that Don Lemon knows what every black person is thinking as they watch this, because apparently he speaks for all of them. So, Jim, it's basically crazy in many ways. There are conservatives who, of course, didn't care much about Kanye West until he put on the MAGA hat, and now all of a sudden he's speaking great truth somehow. And then on the flip side, the liberals don't like the fact that Kanye West likes Donald Trump, so they're trashing him in every way, 6 ways from Sunday, including saying his deceased mother would be so ashamed of him. It's just amazing.
Greg, I want to build a time machine, and I want to go back about a decade and warn people about a lot of things, but high among them, that by 2018, the midterm elections will be seen as a kind of a surrogate battle between Kanye West and Taylor Swift, and that the country star is on the Democratic side and the hip-hop star is on the Republican side. And just watch their heads explode, Greg. That's where we are. Look, as I put it in today's Morning Jolt newsletter, I was not a big fan of Kanye back in the George Bush hates black people stage, the I'm gonna let you finish stage, much to the frustration of my pop culture podcast co-host. I'm not a huge fan of the Kanye and Kim Kardashian show, although I suppose I should give her some credit for swaying Trump on criminal justice reform. Mickey White's work on studying Kanye and Kim has suddenly turned into really important political science scholarship in the world of 2018. So I'm not going to dance a jig when, Kanye West suddenly puts on a MAGA hat and says, this makes me feel like Superman, and all of a sudden he finds a Republican he can like. As I put it today, these are two egomaniacal narcissists who married models and figured out how to play the media like a fiddle. I don't doubt the two really see each other as this is a real genuine budding friendship between Donald Trump and Kanye West. Greg, I mean, after all, game respects game. They're two of a kind, and they look at each other and they see a mirror. And what do they like more than looking in the mirror? But all in all, I don't really feel all that strongly towards Kanye one way or the other. You should try ignoring him, folks. It really works wonders. Apparently that's impossible for lots of people. But then this idea that, now Kanye West has gone too far. Now Kanye West has gone crazy. Again, I don't pay that much attention to the guy. The media keeps force-feeding me every time he does something ridiculous at an award show or his latest videos or stuff like that. He's always kind of been off his rocker. Hugging Trump behind the Resolute, that's the crazy thing he did? That's what makes you think he's mentally ill? Come on. I suppose you could have a more serious discussion about how when somebody comes out and starts doing things that are pro-Republican, that raises a red flag for mental instability in voices in the media in a way that, Lady Gaga wearing a meat suit didn't do it about a decade or so ago. So, look, I don't know what to do, what to say here. I know there are lots of people who love this. I think you could kind of see the portrait of Abraham Lincoln behind them cringing yesterday. Greg, this is not my cup of tea. I prefer a little more decorum and dignity in my Oval Office. But, a lot of people were really, really upset that Kanye West used the MF word in the Oval Office yesterday. And as I think it was one of my colleagues pointed out, that's really only the second worst thing to come out of somebody's mouth in the Oval Office in the past few decades.
I'm going to leave that right there. I will, however... I will, however, point out a great quote from Stan Evans, the great conservative activist, former head of the National Journalism Center. Unfortunately, the late, great Stan Evans now. But he was giving a seminar to some of our interns one summer, and he used the Lady Gaga wearing the meat dress as an example. And he says, so what's the message here? I see it's one of two things. Either Lady Gaga is demonstrating that she is upholding the command by God that man should have dominion over the animals, or she's just calling attention to herself. You have to decide.
Greg, I saw that as really, whether she intended it or not, probably even more in-your-face PETA move than you and I would ever do. Like, oh, you think you're anti-veganism? I don't just eat meat, I wear it. How do you like them apples?
Oh, but she's back in their good graces now, I guess. I don't know if she took a lot of heat for that or not. But
yeah, she's moved on to wearing lettuce.
All right, let's move on to our second crazy martini, our third martini of the day. Could be a second good one, depending on how you look at this. Let's look at a couple of Senate races and how they might be interrelated here. We've talked a lot about the improving fortunes for Ted Cruz and his bid for re-election in the Texas Senate race. He was up 9 in a Quinnipiac poll. He's up 8 in the new New York Times poll, 51-43 over Beto O'Rourke. But the big news that has all the Democrats drooling today is that Beto O'Rourke set an all-time record in the third quarter by raising $38.1 million into his campaign, which I guess is just dwarfed the previous record of, I think, $22 million that Rick Lazio raised when he was running against Hillary Clinton in the year 2000. And, of course, it doesn't seem to be doing much good. Now, people in Texas, this isn't over yet. You actually do have to go vote, get to the polls, and make sure that it doesn't work. But if, in fact, Beto O'Rourke falls short, a lot of people are going to be asking questions. Wow, we dumped a ton of money into this race that we ended up not winning and potentially maybe not even getting that close in. There's a lot of other races that where Republicans hold the seats that are much closer, like Nevada or Arizona, where, of course, Jeff Flake is retiring. And we have a pretty tight race between Republican Martha McSally, a congressman, and also Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema, a Democrat. Most of the polls have Sinema, the Democrat, up a little bit. One recent one had McSally up by 6. However, there's new video. And if you were with us yesterday, you know it was Phil Bredesen's campaign staffers who were saying that the people of Tennessee are ignorant. In this case, Kyrsten Sinema doesn't need her staffers to do it because she's done it for them. I'm not exactly sure when this is from, Jim, but I think it's either from the time she first ran for Congress about 8 years ago or even more recent than that. She's at the Net Roots Convention, which is run by the far-left Daily Kos, and here's what she had to say about Arizona.
As we see in this very quote, that the states are the laboratories of democracy, and then my state, Arizona, is clearly the meth lab of democracy. And I cannot take credit for that line. Someone at The Daily Show wrote it, but I'm happy to steal it and use it all the time.
My state is the meth lab of democracy. Jim, it could resonate with some people. I don't know, but I look at the poll for the governor's race in Arizona, and I see the Republican there, Governor Ducey, up 17. So it sounds like the people of Arizona are pretty okay with where the leadership of their state's going right now. We'll see if that resonates in the Senate race.
Yeah, I mean, first note on Beto O'Rourke. I actually have a piece on this in the works for NR. Beto O'Rourke, we've complained about the media, but I think, and how terrible they are, how skewed they can be, how unfair they can be. But the Beto O'Rourke phenomenon is probably the clearest example of wish casting, of projecting what you want to see happen instead of what is actually happening in front of you in this entire election cycle. And the hype and the excitement around him is kind of revealing. Look, we're coming up on $40 million, Greg, that could very well have been used where Democrats could actually use it, including places like Arizona. Although, again, look, vote for me, meth heads, is really an intriguing slogan. I got to give credit where, I really love that quote, that segment there, Greg, until she said it was from the Daily Show and she was going to borrow it. It's a good line. It's funny if you hate Arizona. It's tougher if you're running to be elected by Arizonans, but if you don't like it, fine. Meth lab of democracy. Is that you could see people wearing that as sort of an ironic hipster, pride. As a guy who was born and raised in New Jersey, for a while there were T-shirts that said New Jersey, where only the strong survive. There is something to be said for having that reverse pride in your state. But again, this is going to be a chat. This is not. It was very. I don't know how over at the RNC or NRSC or wherever they have their opposition research going on. But man, oh man, they just picked October 12th. They just went, boop, we're going to go with this. We're going to drop it. And it sounds like there's a bunch of these comments from Kyrsten Sinema. Again, I hate this place and the people in it is a tough closing message for a hard-fought Senate campaign.
It's a little unorthodox, you have to admit, but I just wonder what the context was. I'm guessing it's probably when they passed the immigration laws there that ended up getting challenged at the Supreme Court, but I don't know for sure. But nonetheless, having that type of flippant and negative attitude towards your state and the people who run it, probably not going to help too much.
Greg, if you or I ever tried to run for office in Nevada, all of our way to go, Nevada, way to go would probably come back to haunt us. I mean, here's the thing. If you've ever hated a state, don't run for Senate there. Simple life lesson will save you a lot of grief and aggravation.
We love Nevada. We just think the voters made a really, really bad choice there in 2010.
Just for perspective on Harry Reid, Greg, how much does it take to get you and I saying, yes, Sharon Engel was the good choice?
Right, exactly.
Sharon Engel. She's the good kind of crazy.
Oh, Jim, it's been a while since we've been able to just relax and laugh this much on a Friday. Feels good. Talk to you on Monday.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Geraghty of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and tune in again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.